Scantist, a startup from Singapore. You've heard our co-founders talk about technology. Let me talk a little bit about how it can help your organizations and your businesses. Traditionally, security has been about network infrastructure, endpoint servers. But as we go forward in the cyber landscape, security is starting to take different shapes. One of them is application security. So if your infrastructure is secure, how do you make sure that the applications that run on that infrastructure are also secure? This is a challenge that the industry is facing increasingly. Some of the biggest attacks, like Heartbleed, Panama, and Equifax, are stemming from application-level security breaches. And not only that, they're as a result of exploitation of open source components that were used to build these applications. There are 100,000 plus known vulnerabilities that exist in the ecosystem today which affect applications, and with 16,000 of them being found in the last year alone. This trend is set to continue, and applications will be prone to more and more attacks as we go ahead. So, this problem is further aggravated by the fact that the world is moving towards open source. We have the number of open source libraries grow from 12 million to about 300 million within the next decade. And if you need further validation for this trend, you can look at the latest acquisitions of GitHub and Red Hat by traditionally closed source companies like IBM and Microsoft. The average industry project has about 267 open source components. It's impossible to track them and keep them secure at all times. So how do you deal with that challenge? Well, the one way to deal with that is to keep an inventory, but that's extremely difficult when 97% of all projects use open source. There are 70 new vulnerabilities found every day, and developers will struggle with that tracking process. The other issue is that while the known vulnerabilities can still be tracked, there is the threat of the unknown. How do you find vulnerabilities that have never been found previously? And the approach to finding those vulnerabilities has been traditionally very complex, requiring access to source code, having very high dependency on platform architectures, and looking for a needle in the haystack. So this is where Scantist comes in. And we have the two product lines. One is the software composition analysis, which focuses on known vulnerabilities. And the other is the smart fuzzer, which focuses on unknown vulnerabilities. Known vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities that have been found and are present in the open ecosystem. You can see them, and it's essential you protect yourselves and your organizations from those. Unknown vulnerabilities are those that have not yet been found, are specific to your application, but can pose a serious threat in the future. The way software composition analysis helps to deal with the known vulnerabilities aspect of this is by providing an inventory of your open source components. It gives you a viewpoint and a transparency into your software supply chain and helps you find components and their security and legal compliance risks. This will ensure that your organization and your development team, be it in-house or outsourced, can continue to use open source without any fear of vulnerabilities or legal compliance issues. It can greatly reduce your time to market because we offer remediation advice which can help your development team fix issues very, very fast. It can bring down security costs because now you have a tool which manages all your compliance-related issues. And even if you've been doing all of it right all along, it can help prevent future code decays and vulnerabilities. Because what is secure today is not secure tomorrow. We all know that. This is a quick overview of what using Scantist tools looks like. You log in with your GitHub account, which is where your development code is, and you try and look at your projects. GitHub, for those of you who don't know, can be looked at as a Google Drive for code, right? So you log in, you see your project list, it gives you an alert on your dashboard. Adding a project to the platform is as simple as clicking a few buttons. You get your link of the project, find the project that you want to scan, and just click the simple add button right next to it. Once you add, triggering a scan is as simple as, again, another click of a button. You can also integrate it with your CI/CD pipelines so that you don't even have to do that one click for those of us who are really, really lazy. So when you run the scan, it'll take typically 5 to 10 minutes to run an analysis, and that analysis will pop up as a list of vulnerability reports. So as you will see shortly, you can go to view the details, and a typical report will look something like this. You will have a breakdown of security issues based on severity and the source where they are found from. You can look at CVEs, security bugs, and what we call vulnerable code clones, which are potential vulnerabilities. Looking into the detail of any single issue can provide you not just what is publicly known, but also how to fix them. And this is a really powerful enabler for your development team. They can see the vulnerable code and how it must be fixed, making the access and the remediation really, really fast. To further augment all of this data, we allow you to manage the issues from within the console. So you can suppress issues, ignore those that you think are of low precedence, and so on. You can also view the component level. So not all components are vulnerable, but you need it to track what is it that you're using, what exists. But those that are vulnerable, you can find in one place all the issues that they're causing you and all the threats they're exposing you to. The last part of this analysis tool is an organizational level knowledge graph. This will give you transparency into all the software that exists in your organization and all the issues that are found in common across them. This can, again, focus your remediation effort and make sure that you can address these issues on a quick basis. So that deals with the known vulnerabilities, but what about the unknown? For that, we have the fuzzer. So the Scantist Smart Fuzzer looks for unknown vulnerabilities and not just looks for those vulnerabilities, but also helps identify what is the root cause for those. And it does that in a platform agnostic manner. What we do, this product is something that may not be applicable to every organization, but as you deal with more and more critical infrastructure and critical business operations, this becomes important. You want to stay one step ahead of the hacking curve. This is built on over 5 years of R&D experience at NTU, and we've received tremendous interest from defense and MNCs all across the globe. We take great pride in making sure that we do better than what our competitors offer. There's a lot of data and deep R&D that has gone into building the products that we have here today. We provide high accuracy and low false positive rate because nobody wants to see false positives in a report. We make sure that your security fixes are fast and timely. We make sure we cover source code and binary, so you don't have to look for different solutions for different aspects of your ecosystem. And we make sure that we do all of that in an affordable and a cost-effective manner. So far, we have been lucky. We have received support and compliments from a lot of global telecom giants, automotive industry players, people in the health tech industry, and even e-commerce platforms who have widely adopted our solution and continue to use it. So far, we have tracked 35 new CVs. We have got 100,000 bug bounties and about $250,000 in sales. And this is all before we have even gone to market with the product. To give you a backdrop, all of this was possible because of the hard work and support of a lot of organizations that we have put in through. NTU is where we took birth and we built our core R&D. We've received support from National Research Foundation. We found the support in terms of bug bounty awarded by the likes of Apple and Adobe. And so far, it's been a good journey and we hope to take off in the year 2019. Cybertech Bangkok is one of those stepping stones in the process. Our team at Scantist, you've already met Prof. Liu Yang and Prof. Srikantan, and we have a very strong team of R&D leads, business, as well as from a development standpoint. We are also backed by generous investors who have seen the vision of Scantist and chosen to believe in us. Our roadmap for the future looks beyond security, looks at quality, looks at architecture, looks at providing all of this as a service because not all of you want to use a product. Some of the organizations prefer to use a managed service solution, and we look to forward that. And at the end of it, we hope to bring together a single ecosystem and a single interface to all your software security and quality issues. Thank you so much for your time. You can meet us outside at the booth, and have a good evening. Thank you.
A round of applause for Mr. Rohan Sood. Mr. Sood from Scantist, thank you very much, one of our sponsors for the event. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the two presentations from Build 38 and Scantist on their innovation showcase, of course, new solutions for the cyber area and the Cybertech Startup Show. ค่ะเมื่อสักครู่นี้นะคะก็เป็นการนำเสนอนวัตกรรมนะคะของทาง2องค์กรค่ะ Build 38 แล้วก็ Scantist นั่นเองนะคะไม่ว่าจะเป็นในส่วนของ solution ใหม่สำหรับในยุคของ Cyber Era นะคะหรือว่าจะเป็น Cybertech Startup นั่นเองค่ะสำหรับในหัวข้อถัดไปนะคะเราจะมาพูดถึงการจัดการข้อมูลและโปรแกรมความเป็นส่วนตัวนั่นเองนะคะอีกสักครู่เดียวค่ะจากทาง speaker นะคะของ RSA ค่ะ Ladies and gentlemen, up next we're having Data Governance and Privacy Program Management, which our next speaker is from RSA, which we will see the presentation in just a moment. But first of all, as for the exhibition over here on my left-hand side, we are still open for business matching discussions. So if you have time today, they are open until 6 p.m. So that's approximately about 2.5 hours from now. If you have some time and you want some more details and discuss more with them, please be our guest. We also have the business matching area for your convenience as well. Other than that, on this stage, we're having another 5 topics to go. So if you have already studied the details on the agenda, please be our guest and welcome yourselves here in front of the stage because we still have some seats left. ค่ะสำหรับในหัวข้อถัดไปนี้นะคะการจัดการข้อมูลและโปรแกรมความเป็นส่วนตัวค่ะ Ladies and gentlemen, moving right along, I would like to invite our next speaker on stage, Asha Solution Lead, Asia Pacific and Japan of RSA. Please welcome Mr. James Fong.
Thank you. Just checking the mic. Everybody still awake? I know it's a heavy day. Right, a lot of the speakers are rushing through. I know it's a bit late. I'm doing my best as well to keep you awake, but I've got a few interesting slides to share with you, and also giving a little bit of a twist to what you've actually gone through yesterday and today. Right, not just talking about from an IT security vulnerability perspective, but now probably a very key topic in Thailand where we talk about data privacy. Right, so I'm from RSA Archer. Archer is the largest globally deployed governance, risk and compliance solution that focuses on the 3 pillars of governance, risk and compliance: risk management, compliance and audit, covering the 3 lines of defenses, which is critical towards data privacy or data protection. Right? So who is affected? You're aware about the bill that's already being passed through, right, on data protection in Thailand after a very lengthy discussion. Right? I was also part of it. If you were at ETDA event probably before May last year, right, where we actually had a dialogue, I was also there as one of the panelists together with another 3 distinguished speakers. I still look young, I think, I hope. Okay, so who is affected in data privacy? I'm actually borrowing this from GDPR and the best practices. So actually it's all about anyone who actually has personal information that is identifiable, right? Whether it's actually digital or whether it's a manual process, it doesn't matter. As long as you have personal data that is identifiable to a person, that is what actually invokes data protection or data privacy. So it could be anything that you are touched on in your office, in your company, and the third parties or the vendors and the suppliers or even the customers that you deal with. Okay? So what is expected of us, right, especially from the security standpoint? What your bosses or what the community thinks you should do, and of course from the regulator perspective, they expect you to have this, right? Everybody watched Iron Man before? I'm sure, right? You have not, please go and watch it, right? This is back in when was this out? This was the first Iron Man. 2008. How many years ago? 11 years ago, he already has this. All right, today is 2019. Unfortunately, we have not reached this stage. All right, imagine it's not just for data privacy, but imagine from a data privacy, if you're DPO, right, and you have this dashboard of where your data or personal data, PII data, right, at your fingertips. They'll tell you where the things can go wrong, what's the percentage of leakage, what's the percentage of threat vulnerabilities coming in, right? Wonderful job. We'll be out of the job actually, if you have that technology in, right? But at this moment, it's not there yet. We're aspiring to be there. But unfortunately, this is the situation where we are in, right? I'm sure for those of you who are preparing for data protection, right, the act to come in, this is probably what you'll be doing now, right? If you're not, please check with your colleagues back in office. Is it this one or this one, right? But it's the truth, right? We've seen it happen as well. Philippines has just started, right? I'm from Singapore. So Singapore also has its own DPA 2012. right? A lot of them actually started from that state. But what the businesses expect you to have is actually this particular state, right? So the risk challenge is actually all over us, right? It's not just when we go to office, when we clock in, that's when the risk comes in, right? Even at home. How many of you have this at home? I know Thailand is very, very connected digital country. How many of you have this? Alexa? None? Please go get one, right? Next door, in the mall, right? What happens when you have this? I'm not thinking about, of course, nice music, you know, your kids can play with it. But from a risk perspective, what risks do you think will happen here? Right? Some device or somebody or some organization knows your every word that you speak in your home. Whether it's on or off, you wouldn't know, right? That's why Facebook and a lot of all these big organizations are having all these issues, right? Globally with a lot of regulators, right? Even though it's off, they are still tracking your conversation. Anytime you say Alexa is activated, how would they know that, right? Unless it's tracking your conversation. So please don't say anything sensitive, okay, at home, even at home, right? But these are new things. I think a lot of the speakers have talked about IoT. This is one example, right? And not only in homes right now. Imagine in your office, your CEO already has this in office. Tell me what are the top risks. Tell me what's a potential breach. Wow. Not Alexa, maybe one of your names here. Okay, what is the answer? Do you have the answer? Tough question to answer as well, right? But this is the way technology is moving. This is where we talk about digitization is going to happen, right? One day, maybe not tomorrow, few years down the road, this is going to happen in all your offices. No more laptops, right? No more secretaries. Sorry about that, but everything is through digital. And for data leakages, this is a wonderful map, right? I don't quite like the colors because it's actually very, very negative, right? But if you see from, I just pulled out from 2018, 2019, right? 2017, 18, and 19. How many names are there? And this one only tracks those that has more than 30,000 records losses, okay? So hopefully, I scanned through yesterday, I didn't see any Thai names here, right? Fortunately. But there are some Singapore names here, unfortunately, where I come from. I believe you probably will have read as well, to talk about Sing Health, right? Where they lost 1.5 million records. And more importantly, one person's records was lost. You remember who? The Prime Minister. That's why it's such a big issue in Singapore. Imagine one of your royal family or Prime Minister's name or records have been lost. What will happen here, right? Or any other countries. So it's a big issue. Right? Hopefully, we don't add on to these statistics. So how do we do that? So in this day and age, we talk about modernization. There's been a lot of talk about digitization, digital transformation, right? We've talked about a lot of threats, a lot of people, the bad people. We talk about malice. And we've got a lot of mandates, right? New regulations coming in, new compliance as well. So how does organizations manage all these three areas? And it cuts across top and bottom, right? It's not just us here in this room or those outside the room, but also your bosses and your bosses' bosses at the top, right? The founders, the shareholders, the CEO, and the board of directors, they are also impacted by this, right? And they normally have a few questions, right? Of course, in this day and age, we need to talk about innovation to drive business, to grow the business, right? They're going to ask, how are we going to drive innovation, right? But at the same time, are we managing the risks and compliance requirements, right? And then the next side is are we going to get breached, right? Somebody is going to throw that question. Some of you, one of you will have to answer that particular question, I believe, right? Most of you are either CISO, DPO, CIO, or head of security, head of risks, right? In this room, one of you probably will have to answer that question. If we do get breached, how bad is it going to be? Right? In terms of dollars and cents, reputation, share price, stock market, etc., etc., etc. Right? So these are really the tough questions that is already happening in a lot of the countries that I see, or we see, right, at RSA. So it also boils down to a lot more statistics. This is a survey that was done recently, breach readiness, and you can see that 40% and 30% does not have a formal incident response plan in place. Right? We always talk about, yes, you're going to be breached. It's only when and what's the magnitude. So even then, 30% does not even have a formal incident plan in place. How do we prevent? How do we detect? And if it happens, how do we mitigate it? So we must have controls in all three. We must have tools, people in all these three areas. Do we have them? Right? So that always leads back to risks in the business. Okay? But again, how do we manage all these risks when we have got resource constraint? Probably, if you are unfortunate, you're only one in your team. Right? At best, you may have 2 more guys beside you. But if you have a big team, yes, very good, right? They place emphasis on it. But right now, at this day and age, it's not just about number of people you have in your team, right? You talk about what are tools you have. Do you have the right tools to manage this type of risks across all these 6 areas, right? Do you have the right skill sets? Even if you have more people, you got 100 people, but do you have the right skill sets? Right? So these are the 2 questions that you need to ask. How do we close the gap? I'm also speeding up a little bit more, all right? Where do we start when we talk about data protection? Okay? So there are few areas that I would like to focus on, and very much of understanding your data, the one in the middle, right? What type of data do you have? Where does your data sit? Those are very fundamental, basic questions that you need to ask, right? Don't even talk about data protection, Data Privacy Act, etc., or GDPR. We just talk about where does your data sit? Do you know where your data sit? Is it only internal? What about external? Who has your data, access to your data externally? Third parties, right? Other subsidiaries, other partners, etc., etc. Right? Those are also within your coverage as well. Okay? So these are some of the high-level plans that you can do to start off. But again, goes back to who should be managing privacy or data protection. Right? In organizations, normally there probably be one person, right? A DPO. Right? If you do not have it, then it's probably a shared responsibility across IT security. That's why you guys are here. Compliance team, as well as risk management. And that's where we've got what we call data risk management. Right? And in terms of privacy practice, there's also an association that's called IAPP, right? International Association of Privacy Professionals. Right? So there are also certification for DPOs as a help to them. A lot of the organizations actually get people to double hat as a DPO, right? If you're a risk manager, probably you're a DPO as well. If you're a legal person, you could be a DPO, right? If you're a CISO, you could also double up as a DPO, right? We've seen that happen many times, but do you again have the right skill sets? That's where there are professional standards as well as training, certification programs that can help you on that. By the way, I'm not from IAPP, I don't get commission from that, okay? Just bringing up the level, right, of expertise in this particular special area, right? And for us in RSA, how we do this is actually, again, when we talk about a GRC platform, we actually use these few keywords, inspiring everyone to own risks. When you want to manage privacy risk, it's not just all of us sitting in this room. It's everybody back in office, right? Outside your office, in your branches, people in sales, people in operations. Everybody has a role to play. How do we communicate this, right? So we're talking about data lifecycle. These are the 4 key areas. I won't go into detail, right? This is not a session on data protection, but just to highlight a few key areas where we need to collect, process data, keep and secure, as well as continuously manage, right? So these are the 4 key areas that you need to know of when we talk about data protection, right? Data Protection Act or data privacy. And of course, how to apply a risk assessment on top of these 4 areas. Identify, assess, evaluate. There are many frameworks out there, right? Globally, it's a best practice. How do we actually manage this from the risk perspective across these 4 areas, right? Data subject rights and data protection. Don't worry, I think the slides is with the organizer. You can actually have a copy of that as well, right? So I won't go into very detail in terms of the 4 areas, but the keywords that you probably need to take away from today is really these 4, right? When we talk about risk assessment, that's the first step that you need to do. When we talk about privacy risks. Compliance management, of course, towards a GDPR or something like the new Data Protection Act in Thailand. Data governance, how do you govern the data within your organization? Knowing where information is, how do you manage them? How do you actually eliminate? And once it's breached, what happens in your organization? So you need to cover these basic 4 areas. Okay? Is there help? Yes, there are tools that helps you to do this. Right? And of course, going down deeper in these few areas, like I mentioned, I probably need half a day to take you through this session, but I don't have the liberty, okay? Right? I would love to talk more, but because of the timing is short, but probably I'll just have to skim this through, and probably you can read through, and if you'd like to know more, come to our booth over there. Right? You see the very big signboard over there, RSA? Yes, that's where I'll be. Right? And very importantly, don't forget about third parties. A lot of the failure of data privacy programs is because they look inward, they don't look at outwards. Right? That's why my first question was, or my first statement was really understanding where your data is, internal and externally. Okay? So taking the proven path, right? Very importantly is who has done this before, how has it proven to be successful? And this is where Archer comes in, right? And we actually advocate what we call a GRC approach or GRC strategy towards privacy, right? So it's not just from a compliance perspective, I need to do this, but why? I start off from a risk-based privacy program, right? Where it cuts across all facets of your business, right? Not just IT security, but we also talk about business continuity, we also talk about compliance, third-party management, operational risk or enterprise risk at the top, and supported by your friendly neighbors, auditors, right? I was an auditor before, so I know what you all think of auditors. That's why I call them friendly neighbors, right? Especially when it comes to IT security audits, as well as privacy audits. Yeah, they're not such good friends after all, right? Everything is by the book. So how do we actually drive them to actually look at it from a risk-driven perspective? Okay? And going deeper from that chart, right, this is where individually within what we call risk management, compliance, and audits will actually cover data privacy, right? From compliance, we look at policy management, control assurance. Very much from a GDPR perspective. For those of you who have been involved, in the GDPR programs, when they actually started probably, it was enforced last year, but programs have started probably 2 or 3 years back, right? It was a painful exercise, but everybody had to do it. Then moving on from the risks, right? Really cataloging how to understand the business hierarchy, who owns what type of sensitive data, how do you rate them? And then after applying a risk assessment, right? And reporting, end of the day. Right? All the way down to breach management, third party issues, as well as audit. Each one has a role to play. Remember I mentioned, it's not just you or me sitting here in this room that has to worry about data protection or data privacy. Right? It's also other team members within your organization. All of them have a role to play. Right? So please share that with them. And end of the day, for you or for your senior members, they should have a dashboard, right? To look at where are my data subjects, what are my privacy or processing activities, whether it's red, amber, green, okay, at the touch of a button. Similarly to my first slide, remember? What's his name? Not Robert De Niro. What's his name? Iron Man, right? Iron Man, can't remember his real name. Iron Man, right? He was actually having his charts. Similarly to you or your senior team, you should also have your own dashboards of where your data sits, which one is potentially at breach, which one has got vulnerabilities, how will it impact. So we tackle the prevention portion, right? And of course, if things still happen, how do we talk about breach management? And that's where we talk about activities, how many open activities, how many still existing projects, uncompleted, etc. All these you should have at your fingertips, right? Any DPO here, just for my understanding? Any DPO in this room? No? Or, okay, not, okay, taking too much risk to raise up your hand, right? Okay, understand that? Regulators are not in this room, I think. That's why they're not going to come and interview you afterwards. But jokes aside, right? That is some position that probably not everybody wants to be or to make it a career initiative, right? As a DPO, sadly, right? But before I end, I would like to share a little bit about how the laws of the world are also changing, right? When you talk about data privacy. So you look at this map, right? Those are the red ones are the ones heavy with a lot of data protection acts practices. Right? As you can see, nearer home where we are, it's still about moderate or limited, right? Greens and the yellows, even for apart from Singapore there on the red side, right? But the rest are actually catching up. So you see that this trend is actually continuing to move, right? It will turn red someday. But as of now, it's actually at the infancy stage, right? But we need to put our act together. How do we do that? In a combination of skill sets from the team here, as well as having the right technology or tool to support you in driving this initiative throughout your organization. Okay? So the question is, not just build around privacy, but we have to look at it from a bigger perspective, right? From a security perspective. Okay? When you talk about security, then of course it involves other areas, not just your privacy team, because it cannot act alone, right? Everyone has to come in. Right? So I hope that I've shared a very quick perspective of how we at RSA Archer looks at data privacy. Okay? You can also write to me, or you can actually see me at the booth afterwards. If you find my talk interesting, do give me a thumbs up, yeah, afterwards. All right? So as you can see, Archer, okay, just to finish off, is a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. I think just now there are quite a number of speakers also talked about Gartner. So in Gartner Magic Quadrant, when we talk about governance, risk, and compliance, we have been a leader for at least more than 5 years, right? More than 5 years for each of the areas. We talk about integrated risk, operational risk, compliance, IT risks. Currently, they don't have one for privacy yet, right? In terms of Gartner Magic Quadrant. Okay? So I hope that I've shared enough for you. Just a little bit of snapshot, a teaser, right? If you want to hear the 2-hour-long session, do write to me. I'll be happy to share. Thank you so much.
A round of applause for Mr. James Fong. Thank you very much, Mr. Fong, for your presentation on data governance and privacy program management. ในหัวข้อถัดไปค่ะจะเป็นการบรรยายเกี่ยวกับผลกระทบทางเศรษฐกิจและความเชื่อมั่นทางการเงินนะคะกับ Economic Impact Financial Confidence สำหรับผู้บรรยายของเราท่านต่อไปค่ะลาลาลาลา
ทุกๆนาทีที่เราเดินไปด้วยกันต่างแบ่งปันกันด้วยกำลังใจที่เธอฉันเติมให้กันนั้นยิ่งใหญ่มีค่าเหนือสิ่งใดในทุกวัน